There is a difference between a story that is banned and a story that is erased. A banned story still exists. Someone is still telling it, somewhere in a locked room or a buried manuscript, or a whispered tradition that survived despite everything. A banned story has a shape. You can point to it. You can say, that is the thing they did not want you to have. An erased story is different. An erased story has been removed so completely from the official record that most people never knew it was missing. There is no gap, no outline, no obvious absence. The text around it closes over, smooth and unbroken, and what was there before is simply gone. The 3 stories I am going to tell you tonight were not banned. They were erased. One was written out of Scripture before Scripture was finished. One was declared heresy and hunted to the edge of extinction. One was chiseled off every monument in an entire civilization, until the man at the center of it ceased, officially, to have ever existed. In each case, the erasure was deliberate, targeted, and very nearly successful. In each case, something survived. And what survived tells a different story than the one you were given. Genesis gives Adam one wife. That wife is Eve, created from his rib, present from the 2nd chapter forward. What Genesis does not tell you is that there are older texts tracing back to Mesopotamian sources. These predate the Hebrew Bible, describing a different woman entirely. A first wife. A woman not made from Adam's body, but from the same earth at the same time as his equal. Her name was Lilith. The earliest references to her appear in Mesopotamian literature in a figure called the Lilichu, a night spirit, associated with wind and disease. But by the time the rabbinical tradition engages with her, she has become something far more specific. In the medieval text known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira, she is a woman created alongside Adam, a woman who refused. The refusal is the center of the story. When Adam expected her to lie beneath him, she refused, on the grounds that they had been made equally, and she would not accept a position of submission. When the argument could not be resolved, she spoke aloud the true and ineffable name of God, the name that was not supposed to be spoken, and she left Eden, by choice, before the fall, before the serpent, before Eve. God sent 3 angels to bring her back. She refused them too. What she became in the tradition that followed is instructive. She was classified as a demon, a killer of infants, a seducer of sleeping men. Every dark attribute available in the rabbinical imagination was applied to her. In text after text, across centuries, the woman who left was transformed into a monster. But she was not put back into Genesis. That is the thing worth sitting with. The rabbinical scholars who wrote about Lilith extensively, who built an entire demonology around her, never attempted to restore her to the canonical text. She existed in the margins, in secondary literature, in protective amulets made to guard newborns against her, but the scripture itself was not reopened to include her. She was not made into a cautionary tale. She was not made into Eve's shadow. She was removed from the primary document, and the scholars who knew she had been there chose to leave her out. The story she carries, that the first woman left paradise of her own free will, refused to return, and was punished for it with centuries of demonization, was considered more dangerous than anything the serpent said. The Gospel of Mary. In 1896, German scholar Karl Reinhardt purchased a papyrus manuscript in Cairo. Dated to the 5th century AD, written in Coptic, it contained a text unseen for centuries. It was a text that had not been seen since the early centuries of Christianity. It was called the Gospel of Mary. This text had been declared heresy roughly 1600 years earlier. The text describes a conversation between the risen Christ and his disciples. He gives them final teachings and departs. The disciples are frightened and grieving. Uncertain how to proceed, it is Mary Magdalene who steadies them. She alone is not afraid. Peter asks her to share what the Lord told her privately, what he revealed to her alone. What he revealed to her that he revealed to no one else, she does. What she shares is a description of the soul's journey past the powers that seek to hold it, teachings that place inner knowledge above external law, locating the divine inside the individual. This is Gnostic theology in its clearest form, transmitted by a woman, not by Peter, but by a woman the canonical tradition would later classify as a repentant sinner. Peter's response is to challenge her directly. He asks if Christ would teach a woman privately. He questions if she is fabricating what she claims to have received. Another disciple, Levi, defends her. He tells Peter that if Christ found her worthy, Peter has no standing to reject her. The argument in the text is explicit. The politics of it are not subtle. Mary Magdalene is the primary inheritor of Christ's inner teaching. Peter is the figure who challenges her authority, and a third voice adjudicating between them. This is a document about who gets to speak for the tradition, and it does not answer that question in Peter's favor. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD established the canonical New Testament. The Gospel of Mary was not included. Within decades, it was not merely excluded, but actively suppressed, hunted across the communities that had preserved it, destroyed wherever it was found. One copy survived, and that surviving copy is missing pages, the most critical section of the text. The full account of what Mary actually received, the specific teachings Christ gave only to her, is gone. Whether those pages were lost to time or removed by someone who found them, the record does not say. What survives is a document about a woman who was trusted above all others, and a tradition that spent 16 centuries making sure you would remember her differently. In approximately 1353 BC, a pharaoh took the throne of Egypt. His decisions would produce one of the most comprehensive acts of historical erasure in the ancient world. His name, at birth, was Amenhotep IV. He later changed it to Akhenaten. Within the first years of his reign, he did something no ruler of Egypt had done. He abolished the entire Egyptian pantheon, all of it. Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, the full structure of gods that had organized Egyptian civilization for over 1,000 years. All of it was declared void. In their place, Akhenaten installed a single deity, the Aten, the disk of the sun, Egypt's first monotheism. He built a new capital city from bare ground, a city called Akhenaten, on a site where no god had ever been worshipped before, to make the point that this was something entirely new. He moved the court there. He redirected the temple economy. He reordered the priesthood of Amun, one of the most powerful institutions in Egypt, stripping it of its wealth and authority. For roughly 17 years, Egypt was monotheist. After Akhenaten died, his successors moved quickly. The capital was abandoned. The old gods were restored. And then the erasure began. His name was chiseled off monuments. His image was defaced. His city was systematically dismantled, its stones repurposed for other buildings. The records of his reign were altered or destroyed. His successors, including Tutankhamun, who was likely his son, were renumbered in the official king lists, as though Akhenaten had never existed. The erasure was so thorough that by the time Egypt faded as a civilization, virtually no trace of him remained. Historians did not know he had existed until the 19th century. For 3,000 years, the erasure held. What makes this story larger than one pharaoh's fate is what several serious scholars have argued about what he represents. The monotheism Akhenaten introduced, the idea of a single all-powerful solar deity who demanded exclusive worship, appears in the historical record within living memory of the Exodus narrative. The connection between Akhenaten's theology and the emergence of Abrahamic monotheism is not a fringe theory. It is debated in peer-reviewed scholarship, cited by figures including Sigmund Freud in his final work, and it has never been conclusively closed. If there is a line from Akhenaten to Moses, then the man who was erased from Egyptian history is also the origin point of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam combined. The people who chiseled his name off every wall in Egypt had no way of knowing that. They simply knew he had to be gone. 3 stories. 3 erasures. A woman written out of the first book of Scripture because she refused to be subordinate. A woman written out of the New Testament because she was trusted too much. A man chiseled off every monument in a civilization because he rewrote the nature of God. In each case, what the people doing the erasing feared was not the story itself. What they feared was the question the story asked, about who has authority, about who was there first, about where the ideas we consider foundational actually came from. Banned stories survive because someone keeps telling them. Erased stories survive because the erasure is never quite complete. Something always gets left behind. These 3 did.